There's a big opportunity to acquire these assets.
If you don't have that solid person there, how do you expand?
Somewhere in Japan or Korea, and it was like 50% of the businesses actually just closed their doors profitable. And in the US, it wasn't that far behind it. Their kids don't want it, or they just don't want the hassle of selling it. They just literally shut their doors and don't even sell it.
Either you're going to be successful or you're going to fail. Those are only really the two options.
Building massive businesses, we've seen this country largest transfers of wealth. Baby boomers just coming of age. If you buy a business, you have
All right, so welcome back to the KB podcast. My name's Kylie Brown. I have Gio Oliva. How do you say it again? Oliva?
Oliva, there you go.
Oliva.
Good save.
Yeah. We were just talking about that. So I said Olivia originally, so my apologies. But Gio has became a pretty good friend of mine, actually. And, I've known him for, about a year and a half now. And he actually works with me with quite a bit of stuff. But today we're speaking about acquisitions, all the pitfalls, what can happen, what can go right, what can go wrong. So Gio, welcome. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you setting it up. We've been looking forward to this conversation, actually, because as you know, I've been in the space of raising capital for 20 plus years, and you're doing it for a lot of other people. And after reading a couple of books, I brought some props with me, and well, I'm sure we'll dive into these. Buy, then build. And this one here, let's have a look. Let's get it in. This is Main Street, Cody Sanchez, and this one is by Walker Diebel, and I think this is key because you built some businesses from scratch, right? And there's an experience that comes along with that, and then there's the option where this guy's talking about go and acquire something after the fact. So I think that will fit into your story, and she talks about sexy businesses and unsexy businesses. So I've got a lot of questions around what you're doing, and we'll unpack that. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it, and I think I'm at that stage where I've always thought about, I understand the real estate space, being an ex-commercial real estate investment broker and seeing what happens there. And I suppose the path that people go on from maybe broker to acquisition to then maybe syndicating and raising money for these deals, right? Obviously what you're doing. So, and that always got me thinking that, this core people that own those assets, the baby boomers, they also own a lot of the small businesses in America, and there's a big opportunity to acquire these assets because
right now,
I think the silver tsunami, I think is the term I heard. And I'm really intrigued about it. It's one thing reading it in a book, and there's another thing getting the grey hairs and the scars. So that's probably what we'll unpack. And maybe you want to start there about what got you from where you're at, building these businesses successfully, becoming successfully. Then, was there an aha moment? And what was it that led you to say, let me go out there and acquire a business that's already established? Maybe you can give us the backstory on that got you to that point.
Yeah, no, great question, actually. I like that, though. So I've opened from, ground up all my own businesses from day one for the last 42 now. So the last 20 years of my life, started in real estate, ran real estate companies, call centers, all this stuff. But I've grown them from the ground up. It wasn't until the last few years, and I've been very successful on my own companies, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. When you're building your own company, finding the right people is crucial. That takes a long time to, put a lot of that together. So, but what I found out over the last few years, and this is working with different groups, I will give a little bit of props to JT Fox and Adam Coffey and all those guys, but acquiring the right businesses, man. And obviously, I've purchased some businesses recently. That's been going good to an extent. And then you got your ups and downs, but it's just a totally different realm approaching. So I'm still kind of wet behind the ears on, acquiring businesses, but it's interesting, to say the least. So there's a huge difference, though, going from building a business from the ground up, which is exciting in its own way, to having a business that's already built with people that already are set in their ways, and you got to go in there and try to make it more profitable. So reduce overhead cost and increase profitability to get it to where you're looking for the profits to be at.
Yeah, and I think when you deal with a business that's got an owner at the helm of it, and they all of a sudden step out. And of course, there's a transition, right? I'm sure that can be structured in a number of different ways from how long they help transition. But either way, I think, has that given you any problems? And maybe talk to your specific acquisition. Is the current owner still in place? Has he exited? Could you talk a little bit more in detail about that?
Yeah. So the last one we just did, it was a company down in Florida, IGC. So it's for property management. Great company. I actually really like the owner. We're still in the transition of switching over, internet and stuff like that. But we had basically a 60-day transfer agreement with them. I forgot what the actual lettering means or is, but he literally just left yesterday, which we're not 60 days in, but he's still helping with the transition. I think we're only, when did we close on that? Like April 1st. So we're about 45 days in, give or take. We got another week or two, but the transition's been going pretty good. But I can't tell you all the headaches we ran into that, were just kind of unexpected. But as we build out our acquisition side and our acquisition team and hire on more people, I expect that to get much better. And I think some of the people that are coming onto our team, they're rock stars in this industry, and they've done very well. So that'll take a lot off my plate, but it is good for me to experience it, because without me going through it, I can't relate to what they're going through each and every day and how they build out the teams and what they're looking for. So it's interesting so far.
Yeah, well, you polish that process, don't you, over time?
Absolutely.
And I think failing forward is part of being an entrepreneur and anybody that wants to be successful. So,
Well, yeah, but you want it to be like, plug and play. So it doesn't matter what the business is. You have those things in place, and, you plug them in, the acquisition guys, the website guys, everybody, and they could keep expanding that business out. So sorry for interrupting you.
Well, you've learned that quick, right? That's what I'm saying. You're going to invest in that. Some people won't. They'll be, maybe the ego gets in the way. Maybe they'll go down that path, and maybe that's a failure. And they're not. You're thinking scale, right? As well. That's the other part. I think there's, some people, like, you can't do 10 of these till you do one, right? And then what do you learn from that? How do you expand it? So let me ask you this: was there anybody that you followed, a mentor, a book? Like I mentioned, I read these two books, and I follow these guys online, and that got me really intrigued about the opportunity. Was there anybody in your life that gave you the mentorship or the motivation to step into this realm?
One exact person. I can't really, put a trigger on that. There are numerous books and stuff that I've read over the years. Like, I really like Think and Grow Rich, the way it makes you change your way of thinking, because without that in my life, I don't know if I would be anywhere near where I am. And I've changed my whole life from going to pushing things and making me make it happen to, just changing my way of, I look at things and how things are supposed to happen, but it's what I believe is going to happen no matter what. So my beliefs there, but, and I'm not trying to be religious on this, because that's not what it's about, but I leave a lot of stuff to, the Lord Almighty Jesus. So, like, I pray on everything anymore. And that's got me farther than I could mention on any other subject. So I'm not sure if that's you dinging in the background, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, quality over quantity, I suppose. It's, actually I read something this morning from Marcus Aurelius. I read a bit of Stoicism in the mornings, and it was all about that. If you could have a library, I've got a lot of books behind me, and I was like, maybe I've missed this one. It's like, you're better off, focusing on a few things, and if Jesus is one of those things, great. There's a lot to be learned from one person. You don't need 50 mentors, you don't need 500 books, because ultimately that quality of the message is more important. Okay, so what about then? You mentioned headaches, Kylie, right? Let's go into that a little bit more detail, because you mentioned, obviously, next time around you're going to foresee a lot of this stuff. The team you're bringing on, these speed humps are going to be taken out, the future process. But just for somebody that is maybe on the fence, maybe they haven't taken action and are a little scared because maybe they're overthinking some of these problems, go into some of those problems, if you will, and then tell us how you kind of solved the issue.
Well, you didn't ask about this, but like you're saying, about people that are delaying on taking action. I think that's the biggest issue for a lot of people. Like, anytime, like, I was talking to, what was it, my oldest son last night. I was like, buddy, it doesn't matter what it is in life, instantly take action on it. Like, if you're trying to get in shape, do it today. Don't wait until next month or, Monday or whatever else. Start doing it now. Like, okay, you got a birthday party tomorrow. Cool. Go eat ice cream, cake, whatever else. But take action right now. So, that's one of the big things I look at. But
and give me 5 minutes.
Well, like, people procrastinate. Like, what was it? Disney World's saying, stop getting ready and just start doing. I don't know what his exact wording is, but something along those lines. And I like that, honestly. My wife's a big fan of Disney, so.
No, I mean, that's huge. I mean, we all fall prey to it. I think everybody's guilty of it at some point in another. And, certainly myself, I'd build this big plan for working out and overthinking and never want to do it. And I'm like, I'm just going to go out for a walk today, and then built upon that. And now I'm pretty regular with it. But there was a period where I just couldn't get going, and that was it. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and walk around the block. And then from there, turned into a run, and it builds from there. So micro steps.
That's funny though, is like, I forget about that, because like, it feels like I've been so routine to like just instantly do everything anymore. Like, it doesn't matter if I got to wake up at 3 a.m., start doing it right away, whatever it is. And I forgot what it was like 20 years ago, where you got to push yourself, it just feels natural to have to do that anymore. So my apologies, but I just was thinking that, like, it's not natural. That's feels natural to me, but not to most people.
Well, it's the difference, though. It really, because you've got to embrace the boredom. That's the thing. And because we live in a world where we're on social media and everything's instant gratification, and your business model and what we're talking about today, this didn't happen overnight. You've had this in your mind. You took action to get it to where you're at today, right? So it all falls in line. So yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, the only thing I don't really take instant action on is, and I love her to death, but, when my wife's always trying to tell me certain things to do, but outside of that.
Well, that might take us a lifetime to learn,
Yeah.
and we still may implement it. So no, I know what you mean, for sure.
I apologize.
Okay.
What was your main question though? Like the hurdle?
We were going into the challenge, like some of the challenges you mentioned you've been having with this. Let's unpack a little bit.
A lot of it comes down to the people you have in place. Like if I would have had a little bit stronger acquisition team in place, and I know understand a lot of people can't afford that when they're first starting out, but if you can, I would recommend, finding at least a few key people that you have in place right off the bat. And, I think we have a great team down in Orlando and, obviously that's expand out into Melbourne and everything else, but, all the issues we're running into and we're not boots on the ground. I'm here in Missouri and a lot of our other team is all throughout the United States or all throughout the world. So if you don't have that solid person there, how do you expand? How do you do it thoroughly and know that everything's running smoothly? So there's a few things, that you got to overcome. And not saying I won't fly down her because I've flown down her a couple times already, but, there's a few things that I need to have in place to make it a lot more effective where I could go on, a bigger scale because it's not about buying one company or 5 or 10 companies. We're looking at, doing something really big. And I expect this to be a multi, 9, 10 figure business, if not more. So, but to get there, you got to have the right people like you, Gio, you want to have people that have already done this. And we're bringing on some big guys that have built out, the companies like Vacasa or Airbnb and stuff like that. They've helped raise funds and, build the acquisition side and all that. And you want those people that are seasoned, but, you're looking for good people as well. It's not just their experience.
Sure. Well, I think that's probably going to be less people in terms of the people watching, right? They're going to be in a position to be able to do that. If you didn't have the ability to do that, how would you get into the deal? What would you do? What would be the action steps that you take if you didn't have a team like that? You're a solo guy. You've come across a good opportunity. So small and mum and pup business. I don't know what, depending on what someone's looking at, $1 million revenue to 5 million. I don't know. I mean, typically these opportunities are going to be in Main Street, not middle market and upper market, because that's where all the big players are anyway, right? Those guys. So what would be the advice for the first step?
Well, I think an acquisition on the first one, if you don't have, the team capability, it's going to be a little stressful. So, and you don't have to have a lot, but you definitely got to have something that's overseeing your agreements that you have with the people, because there's so much in your agreement that you need, like even that 60-day time frame of the transition. And then what happens is if it loses profit, there's a lot of things you need to put in place. So like, let's say you buy a business for $1 million, right? Do you pay all $1 million up front, or do you pay, $750,000 now, and then the other $250,000 is contingent upon the business maintaining a certain, profit level for a certain amount of months? How long does the, manager or, owner stay on board? Is the whole team staying on board? Do we have agreements in place? So there's a lot of things that you need to go in and negotiate and make sure that's in place. You don't just go buy a business, blindly, not knowing if your team's not going to be there, because without the team, there's no business to run. But I think that's crucial. I think that's your first and foremost is learning the contract and how that needs to lay out. So seeing what other big companies, successful companies have done. And here's the cool part with the technology we have nowadays with Chat GPT and, Grok and all those other ones, Gemini, you could find anything. Like there's pretty much, tip of your fingertips anymore. So.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to these guys. Not that these aren't paying us any money to promote these, but I think if you can find the right mentor, that's where these people have created a space for their own business, right? To show people they've done it multiple times, and now that they're going to be able to help you, the right person, with these things that you don't know, and you need a team. So not necessarily you've got to have the funds to go out and hire like Kylie has, but you can use people like that. And I think, I don't know what their courses cost. Let's say 10, 15 grand. You're probably going to be in a position where you have access to that information. They're going to help you close a deal. I do know from a lot of the content that I've followed on these guys, let's say it's $1 million business. A lot of the times they're teaching you going out there, you're going to do a seller finance deal perhaps, or you're going to bring in the equity, 90% you're going to use an SBA loan, bring in on the equity portion yourself, whether you bring in a private investor for that equity portion, and that's how they're kind of teaching people to scale. So there's lots of different...
Real quick though on that, because and don't get me wrong, it makes sense to me and you, but for the average person, actually, I'm going to let you respond on that part. Like the financing aspect for a business. And you sound like you already know it pretty well because you've raised funds for tons of people. When you go in to do financing, how does the average person even, put together the financing package?
Well, again, when it comes to SBA, for example, I'll tell you this, there's some really great SBA brokers out there and they'll package it for you, right? So you still want to have the right background, the right finances and experience. Typically depends what type of deal it is. And, that may be key in who you're choosing to be your equity partner. Can you bring somebody in with it, better experience, better credit on paper, and offer them a deal? And, remember, if it's your first deal, you're obviously not going to be as strong as you are 10 deals down the road. So you may have to give up more equity on the front end. You may find a really good opportunity. People might think, want all of it for myself. But, in that scenario, me personally, I'd say to somebody, okay, look, I've got a deal here. I need to put 10% down. I'll kick in some cash. You kick in some cash. And I'll give you half for the equity of the deal. I'll do the management of it. There's so many ways you can structure it. But then you're going to help get that experience you paid for. You're going to get in there. And again, when it comes to the SBA, those brokers, they know their stuff. They know how to get a file packaged and presented to the lender, because a lot of people don't realize about SBA. SBA doesn't give you the money. They guarantee the loan. All these different banks are SBA lenders, and they can write SBA loans, right? So it's not the SBA that are giving you the money. They're just guaranteeing 70% of the loan, I believe it is, something like that. But don't quote me on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the SBA is a great way to go, because usually what are they in right now? The 8 or 9% range, maybe a little bit lower.
I haven't looked for a while, actually. I'm not sure where
Gotcha.
their interest rates.
Well, I think that's where most people run into issues, though, because people got ideals. They want to, buy a business, open a business, whatever. They just don't know how to get started. So I think that's where a lot of it comes into play. And, I was blessed there, and I, hustled. So I did everything from the ground up. So I had to learn everything, in my opinion, the super hard way. But it makes you so resilient once you do it the hard way. It would have been so much better to have actually a good mentor. Like, that would have been invaluable. Like, if you find that type of person, there's not a price point you put on that. And like Gio was saying, even if you give up 50% or 70% of your business, it allows you to learn so much. And that's the one thing I messed up at the beginning. I was trying to keep 100% of everything. I'm absolutely ecstatic to give up 50% of my businesses if I can bring in the right people. Like, why would I not? Because they take care of it all, and I barely have to do anything. I just support the money. I have kind of the mindset of the growth plan and everything that's going to be put in place to make sure the business expands out and we become one of the largest and most ethical businesses out there.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking big picture. Not everybody thinks that way, sadly. But I think you have to in this. It's a paid education as well. And there's different layers to it, right? If somebody's going to have some money, then you don't need to try and convince us to do a seller financing deal. If you've got the cash, you can use your cash. It really depends. So there's so many different ways to structure. I think that's what people need to understand. It's not one size fits all. You can get as creative as you like with these financing deals. If you can present a case to a seller and it makes sense to that seller, you'll be shocked what type of deal you could put together.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've seen it. So,
I believe the market right now is just primed for, a lot of the 50, 60, 70-year-olds that are just looking to retire right now. I think the market's just really primed for buying businesses. So I think right now is a great time if that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah, what's crazy, Kylie? And there was two stats. I remember one was in Japan, somewhere in Japan or Korea. And it was like 50% of the businesses actually just closed their doors profitable. And in the US, it wasn't that far behind it, right? Because their kids don't want it, or they just don't want the hassle of selling it. They just literally shut their doors and don't even sell it. And that to me is crazy. So there's a lot of opportunity if you can offer the right deal to somebody to help.
Well, and that's something we haven't even touched on. So even a business, I'm not going to sit here and explain all the numbers, but even a business producing only, let's say, $250,000 in EBITDA, usually you can sell that business for $1 million. That's on the low end. Usually it's 4x of whatever the EBITDA is on low end.
What I was going to say, what is your target when you're going into a deal? Have you figured out a target of the multiple of what you want to get in there and exit, or you're doing this more for long term? I'm going to push you on the challenge because I still want to know the horror story. We've got to get that out of you in a minute. But let's talk about the longer term thesis of your fund for business acquisition. Are you going in there, getting a business, boosting the value and then exiting, or are you building long-term cash flow from it, or maybe a mixture of both where you've got 80% for cash flow and then you'll boost the revenue and sell? Well, what's the game plan for you guys?
So it's kind of a mixed basket. The overall objective is building into, multi, 10, 11 figures, whatever. But with that being stated, it's not just one business. So let's say you get the property management company and we build that to whatever it is, $100,000 or $100 million a year in net profit. If it feels like it's a time to sell, depends on what's going on with the economy. If we own, 20 other businesses and they're doing better profit wise, or we just see the economy turn in a different direction. Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's what we're going to go off of. We're going to be looking to flip some of them, but when you're buying them at a 4x EBITDA and you put enough of them together, let's say you put, 5 businesses that are all producing, $500,000 EBITDA together, that ends up turning without even increasing its profits. You turn around and sell that for maybe a 6 or 7x multiple on the EBITDA just by putting those businesses together. Now, obviously you want to organize everything, get it simplified, but there's going to be some businesses that we keep for cash flow and there's some businesses we turn around and flip. After we ran them for a couple of years, we built up lowered the cost, of what the business is, compiled them together so the cost is quite a bit lower, and then found ways to increase the profits, which, we're not looking for businesses where we can't increase profits. Almost every business can increase. There's not really one out there that can't.
Well, that's where consolidation helps as well, right? Because you've got scale of economy. That's a good, I suppose, metaphor. If you compare it to, say, single family home to multifamily, right? You've got one, if you own 20 single family homes, you've got 20 headaches. You have 20 different plumbing systems, electrical systems, 20 tenants that can, disappear overnight. Where multifamily, you're spreading that risk. You can bring in systems that are scalable, more cost effective. And these things, again, they affect your bottom line, right? They affect the revenue, they affect your profit, and they affect ultimately your value. So it's so similar in that sense, right? I think that's a really good comparison. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's get back to the challenge, Kylie. So you mentioned a headache. Like let's unpack that. What happened in this particular deal you're talking about, and how did you get around it?
Well, one of the headaches we're still in the process of getting around. So, that's part of not having proper people in place, initially. We thought we had the right people in place, and we feel very confident that they could get the job done, but they need someone that's above them. So, and what that means is like we got someone that could do the day-to-day tasks for the business we just bought, which is incorporated to our other business in Florida, but they're just not at the level where they could handle the expansion plan. So the expansion plan there is to add in these other 5 resources of bringing in extra income, which isn't a lot of money, but an extra, $10,000 a month changes, the business financials tremendously for a small business. And someone will bring in more, but we just don't have that person in place that would help it, take it to where we need to, be in the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months. That being said, we're hustling on the hiring side, and I think we'll have that in place in the next probably 60 days. It's just a miscue on our end. We thought we had the right person, and it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. So the lesson is you've got to expect the unexpected. You've got to be able to be nimble enough to pivot and understand when you're dealing with human beings. there's always some unpredictability, right? They're not AI, sadly. Well,
they're not, and unfortunately it's turning that way, but they're great people and we want to keep them on the team. They're just not quite to the level that we thought they were at. So that's part of, doing the first few acquisitions and make sure you have the right team in place. So
yeah, perfect. Okay, and to summarize that then, what's one thing that you wish you knew before closing on your first deal that you did?
One thing I wish I knew. Well, I learned a lot during the process, but I was fortunate enough, I'm in a position where I could financially afford someone that's done numerous acquisitions. So I got to save myself a lot of headache on, negotiating contracts and everything, but just the amount I would have to be involved. I was trying to be more hands off on this one. And I know most people are not going to be in that position. They're going to be in the exact opposite position where they want to be hands on and handling everything from A to Z. But I wish I would have just known how much I actually had to be hands on this, which, was not expected because I'm, the other businesses I run and I'm growing.
Yeah, busy. Yeah,
it's been beyond busy. So, but that extra.
That's why we got this time today. I mean,
yeah,
we got lucky to get this on the calendar.
No, absolutely. We missed the one, whatever it was, Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, Gio, appreciate you taking the time. It's all about time. You got to make sure you put a value on your time. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing. I just need the right people in place. So that would be the one thing, is make sure I would have put that in place a little bit earlier on the time frame. So I would have scheduled more time for that business versus what I'm currently doing. But with that being said, I got great people on both sides, both companies, and it's starting to balance out relatively quick.
Yeah, well, you're conscious of it and you know that it's something that's important, it's a priority, and you can fix it, right? I mean, I think that's the most thing. When we go down these rabbit holes and we're I suppose we've got the blinkers on, that's, I think, the death sentence for everybody. You got to be open to different perspectives and learn that you got to change.
I can't tell you how many businesses I've looked at, though, like, and their profits look amazing, but, their numbers look so vastly different by year. So I think that's one of my most probably, I'm not going to say nerve-wracking because I don't really get stressed about too much anymore. But when you see someone's profits, they go from like $2 million up to like $7 million within a year and a half. You're like, okay, well, what happened there?
Why? I mean, you want to know, and I'm sure, actually, that leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
If you had to pick, let's say, top 3 metrics that you want to look at when you're initially looking at a business before you decide to move forward, what would they be from your perspective?
Well, so metric wise, you're looking at just numbers, correct?
Yeah.
And I'm not.
I mean, it's analytics, right?
Well, the first and foremost is the most important part, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I haven't bought enough of them to know that this is going to be the end all be all. But we're not looking to buy businesses that aren't already performing. They're not already solid. They're not already producing great money. Like, I don't want to go in and rehab a business. That's not my objective right now. And that's probably where we went a little bit wrong on this last one we did. We probably bought it a little too small. where I'd probably buy something that was, at least 2 to 4 times bigger than what it is, what that one was. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest headaches, that if you go into a business and you think it's producing good money, but it's good money to you, and that might be, 200,000, 300,000, whatever the number is. But realistically, you're just taking on another job. So that metric on that, you don't want to take on a job. You want to be a business owner. You don't want to be the business. So if I'm buying a business and I become the business, that's worthless. I don't have time to go, and I shouldn't say worthless, so that's disrespectful. Let me take those words back. But that is not my objective. I want to buy the business and put great people in place that could help build that business and turn it into something much more valuable.
Well, again, testament to you bringing in the team at that level, and just I think there's maybe what you realise you're in the wrong level, and you got to go because you've got the team to do it, right? So that takes care of it. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay. And I think definitely one thing I would look at, and I don't know if it's something, well, I'm sure your team would be looking at it, customer concentration, right? Finding a business that is spread over customers. And if it's an established business, it should always have its concentration spread out, right? If it's 1 or 2 big clients and then, that's the bulk of the profit, you're in trouble, right? You take that out. So, that's one thing that would jump out to me. Is that something that you guys discussed internally?
Oh, absolutely. So and I'll even relate this more over to Blue Onyx, so we talk about one of our main clients all the time over there. Yeah, they're our main client. But with that being said, if you're relying on one client, what happens if they go out of business? Or what happens if they're not looking to expand anymore? What happens if their whole business plan changes and they're not looking to be in the Missouri market or Florida market? So you have to have diversity there. Like if you're relying on one thing, it's very stressful. And we're not looking to put ourselves in that position. So not only do we have, our thing that backs up that home builder where we could step in and build it ourselves, we have, 4 or 5 other home builders that we built great relationships with that we could be selling these lots to as well. So it's the same on when you're purchasing the business, exact same setup.
Yeah. I had that exact same conversation this morning with somebody about that. Obviously, it's great to have a solid. Again, remember, there's starting points, right? If you're 10 years in and you're in that position, well, then the question asked, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? This is early stage, and that makes sense. You go from there to there to there, but you know that you need to expand your customer base. That's key because that spreads risk. That makes it easier, predictable, and you're less exposed, right, to things that can happen. Because we all know businesses can go out of, even solid businesses can go bust, right? So that's a big.
Well, I mean, look at even right now. Look how many businesses are laying off people, shutting down stores. It's even the biggest of the big. What is it? Neiman Marcus or Saks Fifth. There's a few even closing up here in high end areas. So their business is obviously slowing down at the moment. But that means there's a great time to purchase when everybody's pulling back. That's a great time for you to want to go in and purchase. So if you're looking to buy a business, I would say now is a great time to do that, to start evaluating, looking into it, and seeing where you want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's gold, isn't it? It's where most people get nervous. It's when you kind of got to double down. I think the great Grant Cardone is famous for that, isn't he? It's just double down when everyone gets to that mindset where there's scarcity, they're contracting. It's when you want to really, really, bet on yourself and go for it.
No, even and I hate to refer to this, but it's the same thing in my opinion. One of our marketing guys was talking to me the other day. He's like, "Are you upset about the crypto market?" I was like, "No, this is great. I didn't think I had another chance to get back in, for more money, which, I'm highly invested in there. But I think it's great. Most people are pulling back. They're not investing. I think the market's going to go down even farther right now than what it is. And I hope it does."
Yeah, I won't tell you how much percent I'm behind on those tips you gave me. No, I'm in the same mindset. It's just set, forget. And I've been actually doubling down on a lot of that stuff because it's cheaper. Because again, all depends on your mindset of how you're going in if you're long term. But I watched a really good documentary, not to get off topic, about some guys and I had no idea about this. This Dutch guy, he was multimillionaire in the crypto space, but they built this community, I want to say in Thailand or somewhere like that, a whole island these guys took over, and it was a whole ecosystem of crypto guys, and they got in, they sold all of their properties, and they all kind of went to this island. This unbelievable story. I'll send you the link.
It's actually very interesting. I've seen a lot of people do stuff like that, but that would have been the 2017 era?
Yeah. This guy was had 40 employees in Holland, and real quirky guy, real good character. Sold everything. I want to say maybe Bali, I think it was, somewhere like that, an island off the coast of Bali. And there was just this hub of entrepreneurs with the right mindset that believed in, non-centralized currency. And they doubled down on it. And when it went back, and now they're loving the fact it's pulling back,
So I'm saying this, and don't take this the wrong way, anybody that's listening, but I actually love that because, and you gotta be careful with doing this actually, but what book was that from? I'm trying to think what book it's from, but anyway, it's, when they went to war, I forgot what war it was, but they were told to burn the ships. So there was only two options. Either they won the war or they died, right? So when you burn your ships and you have no way to turn back, it doesn't matter if that's in business or anything else, you quit your job and the business is the only thing, either you're going to be successful or you're going to fail. Those are only really the two options at that point. And I know that sounds horrible in some ways, but if you put yourself in that position where the only option is success, I personally like that. I thrive on that. Not everybody does. Some people need to go a different route, but I thrive on that. So I put myself in that position a lot of times. I like that, like where you're saying they burnt their ships and they went all in on the crypto, which I'm not telling you go all in crypto. That's definitely not what I'm saying. It's a great market.
Disclaimer.
I'm not a financial advisor, but yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, no, it's I mean, I've been guilty. I've been spinning so many plates over the years, and if you don't pick one, I think Patrick Bet-David, I've got one of his books on the back there, which I did actually read, and it was about the one thing. Well, I didn't take the lesson when I read it. I mean, I read this 10 years ago, and it took me 10 years to really get to a point of, you know what, I need to double down on one thing, and sometimes it takes us longer than others. But okay, obviously we're coming to a point of closing time-wise. Let me ask you a couple quick questions to kind of close on this then. First of all, very quickly about the actual area that you're in, like why property management? Why not, laundromats, HVAC, and all the car washes, all these other things that we're seeing online that people are talking about? For you, why? I mean, I think I know the answer because of what space you're in, but maybe there's some things that you can share. Why did you get into that space?
Well, I think it's smart to always go into something that you vaguely know or know a lot about. So I did short-term rentals for a long time. Owned a company. We grew it to be one of the larger companies for short-term rentals, especially for resorts and homes and stuff. We did really well. But with that being stated, property management was completely different than short-term rentals. I know it sounds the same. It's a house. You could short-term it, you could long-term it. They're two different worlds. Honestly, you can't even utilize the same employees to do that business, but I at least knew the industry. I knew a little bit more about it, and I got into, opening my own company, RPM in Florida. And from there, we knew we wanted to expand quickly. So our, 3 and 5 year projections, they're going to be coming up quick. So to be able to hit those goals, we knew we had to expand quick, but I knew the business at least. I felt comfortable with it. If it's something you feel comfortable with, it's a lot easier to digest versus if you're going into, I don't know what to compare it to really off, but like, I don't know anything about space shuttles. I can't really go in there and, build a SpaceX or anything else like that, like Elon Musk. That's just not my realm,
No, I think as well, some passion behind what you're doing as well. That can help you, right?
Oh,
even if you don't know as much, but you're passionate, it gives you that motivation to get out there and learn it because you've got the right mindset.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to close then, what's one piece of advice for somebody that is terrified, they're on the edge, they're procrastinating? We talked about this earlier, right? They're procrastinating.
Yep.
What's the one piece of advice you'd give those people?
It's pretty much what I said earlier. I mean, you got to, two things. So you got to put your faith, I'm not saying anything, but my faith is in Jesus. So put your faith in Jesus, pray on it, and keep pushing forward, because whatever you think and believe to be true, whether it's right or wrong, will become reality. So I think that's first and foremost. But the second one is basically what I said. Get started right away. Do not wait. Like, I've been talking to my daughter about this nonstop. I'm like, baby, you're 13 years old. I was like, by the time you're 20, you could, be a multimillionaire. It's not about the money, because, you want to be successful and you want to have money, but you don't want to be stressed out of your mind all the time. And I didn't have that guidance, but I'm like, get started right now, babe. Like, she's my little sweetheart. So I'm going to push her harder than, obviously I push other people, but I want her to get started. She's trying to build her own brand and everything else. And I love that, but get started today. Don't wait, 2 months, because you'll forget about it. It'll become something in the past. And I've heard my dad say it so many times, and don't get me wrong, I love my dad to death, but he's always says, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done this. I don't want to have those regrets in my life, because I'm only going to be here on this earth for, let's say 70, 80 years. And then I'll be with, the Lord for the rest, but it's a short amount of time here on this earth. So try to do as much good as you can.
Got it. So take action, fail forward, do it today, not tomorrow. So I will finish with amen to that.
Amen, brother.
Perfect.
Well, thanks, Gio, for being on with me, man. Appreciate you taking the time to jump on. We look forward to seeing all of you guys next week. Thank you, and have a blessed weekend.